So our next session will be choosing the right awards to nominate for your agency and your laboratory. And today we have panelist Kanan Krishnaswamy, who is with the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. He's a technology commercialization manager. And we have back with us again is Lisa Mariani with the CDC. She's again a science marketing specialist. And we have Mike Paulus, who's at the ORNL National Laboratory, Oak Ridge, and he's the director of technology transfer. In this panel, we're going to cover what the criteria and the characteristics that are really the representatives should be looking for, the laboratory representatives really should be looking at in choosing which technologies or activities within their laboratory agency that they are thinking about nominating, how to choose it. When you look across your laboratory, the panel is going to discuss how they've done it in the past and what they find significant, and how they make that match of what they do select to the categories that FLC has for the different awards. So I'm going to let each one of you have an opportunity to talk about your own process, starting with Mike, if you don't mind. Mike, can you tell us about sort of what you've done in the past in terms of your process and how you've selected a technology to nominate?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. One thing I do want to say is FLC awards are a big deal at our laboratory. So we celebrate them. Our managers recognize them as significant accomplishments, both for the people on the tech transfer side and the researchers. Our community celebrates them. And so for us, it's a high profile endeavor. And we have very nice buy-in from our scientists in particular. When we try to decide which projects or which technologies to put forward, I like to think in terms of, was there creativity and intentionality on the front end, a partnership ideally between our tech transfer staff and the researchers and our IP legal team. So was there intentionality and forethought? And then is there a potential for impact? So that really is the essence. So I look at the creativity, look at the complexity. Was this an opportunity that fell out of the sky, or was there a lot of work that went into making it happen? Again, I mentioned the intentionality. I look for above and beyond. Did particularly on the tech transfer staff side, did our commercialization manager do more than what you would do for a run-of-the-mill agreement? And we talked about impact. From a tactical perspective, because these will be judged, will it be something that sticks with the reviewer? Is it something that has a little bit of a pizzazz to it, or something that kind of captures the imagination that will make it stand out during the judging process? Researcher engagement is important. You can't put together a good proposal or a good submission if the researcher isn't there to help throughout the process. So their buy-in is very important. We also want to see buy-in from our partner. We tend to focus on the Excellence in Tech Transfer or the Impact Awards. And for those, there's always a partner that you collaborated with. So we want to make sure on the front end that partner will be actively engaged in the process. And then all things being equal, do we have new players at the lab that haven't participated in the past? And if we do, then that's the tiebreaker. Somebody that hasn't had an opportunity to put in an application will get a little bit of a nod, all things being equal.
So the CDC has been really involved, and over the years, actually, I went ahead just for my own personal purposes, and I'm like, when did we submit awards and when did we start? But CDC has actually been involved since at least 1990 with submitting FLC awards. So I know there's been teams involved in this. It's been really neat. It's kind of turned into a grassroots effort. So we have some different labs and inventors who look out for opportunities to say, oh, this might be a good piece for you to write about. And we also are always looking for new success stories anyway. So it's been great. So we keep a running list. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at, we'll have a team collaboration meeting. We'll look at different opportunities. We'll look at best performing technologies, if you will, in terms of product sales. We'll look at some people who we think are really amazing contributors for whether it be creative innovation for technologies, could be technology transfer innovation, that could be champions, they could be Rookie of the Year, for instance. So we look for the people, we look at, was there great partnership too? Did we have something that's timely. So for instance, something around coronavirus or something for monkeypox coming up, for instance, we look at something that might be great that people might have an interest in, as well as we also take a look at some of the oldies and goodies, if you will. So there may be some technologies where we only have a limited time window to submit them, and we haven't submitted them. CDC is a huge place, as you might imagine. There's a lot of national centers who are doing laboratory research and actually having their technologies transferred out through partners efforts and further developed in that. So there's just so much going on. We try to rotate as we can. As mentioned, we want to honor some oldies and goodies folks, inventors who've been around a long time and they might not have had one of their technologies, one of their efforts even highlighted or submitted before. So we'll make sure if it's someone that might be close to retirement, if we know if that lab hasn't been honored before for that effort, we'll try to make sure to submit those folks. But then we also want to make sure that we have new inventor teams recognized or submitted as possible. We definitely look for where the technology has been transferred, so where partners have actually gotten this out into the public domain for public benefit, in our case with CDC. We also do a lot for mixing it up, and then we look for volunteers. For us, it's been really neat. The inventors love it. They just really appreciate the chance, even just to tell their story, because they're oftentimes behind a bench at the laboratory level, and they have some fantastic things going on, but only people within their specialty know of their work. So they just love this. We also do have to get leadership support, and it's not that time consuming, but we need to make sure that the appropriate people are available. We might have someone who retired, for instance, or maybe that particular technology was great 3 years ago, but the lab's moved on to a new project, and we want to make sure that we honor, if the lab's still supporting this, we want to make sure that leaders can weigh in. Also, might be a great technology, but there might be some people for us that are involved in other projects temporarily. They're working on the emergency response, or we had 1 year where someone, it was a really great technology, but the lab said, we'd love to, we just can't. We don't have the bandwidth to help you see this through clearances. We don't have the bandwidth to write this. We appreciate the effort to recognize this, but we respectfully pass. So we also had that too. So definitely having the buy-in within the agency for us has been super important. So that's it in a nutshell. Thanks.
I think the one important fact is that we do work with our sponsors. We do work internally with our sectors to ensure that there's no conflict with our federal agency in terms of trying to go through these trying to go through the award process. It's critical for us to do that because getting that buy-in, getting that stakeholder buy-in across the laboratory and across our sponsor space is very important. And so towards that, we put it through a gauntlet of approvals within the laboratory and make sure that everybody is on board with every technology and that there's no conflict, there are no issues with the licensee, etc., that may raise some red flags. So we put it through that entire approval process before we get there. We have a communications team that actually starts working with us, almost 5-6 months before the awards are due in terms of trying to narrow down what technologies that we select. We are extremely picky about the technologies. We have a running roster of technologies that we have, and we select up to about 6 technologies a year, potentially 7, to basically submit through the process. We are also very picky about what category we choose. We may choose sometimes not to put a technology in 2 categories, only in 1 category. So for instance, there are technologies that are better suited for the interagency partnership award, and we would rather go down that path rather than a tech transfer path. And it's just we just do an analysis internally whether the partnership story is stronger or the tech transfer story is stronger, and accordingly we basically bucketed in one or the other. And so that's one of the reasons why we've had some successes within the interagency partnerships, as well as Excellence in Tech Transfer Awards. In the past, we've also come up with novel methods of doing tech transfer. So we've also looked at new technology transfer vehicles that we have developed, such as the exploratory license that we submitted for FLC awards. So again, trying to also understand that as we continue to innovate in our methods of technology transfer, we also find that trying to get that message across to all the laboratories and to all the federal agencies to show them that, hey, there are new mechanisms by which we can do tech transfer. That's another thing that we look at. So those are the innovations in tech transfer awards. So yeah, let me hand that back to you. That's what I was trying to get across the last time.
How many do you select? And it's really for the three of you guys. Who makes the actual selection? Because right now, for me and for my lab, we're going to go through this process when the call comes out, and it will be my office and the partnership development office, because we manage both the IP portfolio and the licensing portfolio and the partnership portfolio. But who really should be making? And are you guys the one who are making the choices by looking at your portfolios, or who's the group that makes the selection, and how many do you select each year?
So I can start. So we have 4 or 5 what we call commercialization managers, and these are licensing executives that interface closely with the people that negotiate the strategic partnership agreements. And so I asked the commercialization managers to nominate 2 to 3 from their portfolio that might be a good fit. And then we have a meeting and we kind of talk about the positioning of each of them, and then by consensus, or if we can't reach consensus, then I make a call. We pick the 4 for excellence in tech transfer that we think are the most appropriate ones. And then we pick, if there are others that are good fits. Impact is one that we kind of like. We recently have been focusing on the state and regional economic development. But it's a closely held decision that is made by the Tech Transfer Office. Our view is these are tech transfer awards that recognize partnerships between the Tech Transfer Office and the researchers and our external partners. But fundamentally, we see them as a tech transfer award. So we feel that it's our role to make the decision on which ones we put forward.
I agree with you, Mike. Even at P&L, it's the Tech Transfer Office that makes the decision in terms of which technologies are selected. And again, as you pointed out, we have a group of commercialization managers. Again, we have that running roster of technologies. We look at them, and look at each one of them critically and say, is it ready for submission this year, or would it benefit from waiting for another 1 year? Because waiting for another 1 year means that our licensee may have made more progress in getting the technology out to the market, so that we could demonstrate that impact a little bit better. So we make those decisions along with the commercialization managers within this particular team about which ones to hold on, which ones to submit. And if we don't have 4 to submit, we'll choose only 2. That's fine also. We don't have to fill the entire, we don't essentially force ourselves to submit 4 every year. So we literally do a pretty hard cut within the laboratory itself in terms of which ones are ready for submission.
And we do a similar process, although our clearances at CDC are pretty intense, as you might imagine. We go ahead, we have a small group of us, definitely within the Technology Transfer Office, and we work with our colleagues who handle licensing on behalf of CDC at NIH. NIH, NIAID, TIPO, will get recommendations. I will keep a running list, as I mentioned. We'll pull in some of the different notable opportunities that we've worked on over the course of the year, and then a small group of us, a few technology transfer representatives, our supervisor there at NIAD, TIPO. We'll look at the best options between us. We'll come up with a consensus of 1 or 2 best options. We'll certainly circulate that with our director, and then we'll narrow it down. We'll put 1 forward, and then we'll have a backup, if you will. Make sure that that particular lab is interested, has the bandwidth to support us with the entry, and can go back and forth with us. And not only can they support the entry, but then are they going to be available to help on the back end should they win? Certainly, when we go back to in person, we're going to want some agency representation. So hopefully someone from the inventor team can go to accept the award. Can they help us with a poster? Can they help us? Because we'd love to do some promotions in that. And oftentimes their communications teams and their different National Center colleagues will want to take this on as well. So it's a huge team effort. And we only put forward 1 or 2, generally just 1 entry each year. And we make sure it's the best that we have for the particular year. And if we had more clones of a few of us, we would certainly submit more and would love to, but we just really focus on 1 or 2 each year. Thank you.
That's interesting. What we found out, at least in my region, is that we have a lot of different organizations that have more emphasis on the collaboration and less on the tech transfer portfolio. So, and that's because they don't have larger portfolios. So when they are going through and looking at potential submissions, they have to look about using the same words that you guys have all used, like impact and things like that. They're looking at collaborations. So they may not have a technology to look at or assess, but they're looking at what collaborations within their organizations are significant. So they may be looking at either a CRADA or something, or a strategic partnership agreement or something like that. And I know each of you also work with that. Have you ever gone through the process, though, where you've put together an award and just a submission, and just towards the very end of it, just decided this is not the one, or you're not going to submit it? And I see, Kanan, you're nodding your head. Tell us a little bit about that one. What did you end up doing?
Well, we've actually put together, nomination packages, and as we go through the process of honing it and fine-tuning it, we just begin to realize that this particular nomination is just not singing. It is just not hanging together for various reasons, or maybe the collaboration, angle is not strong enough, or maybe the tech transfer impact is not strong enough. So, collectively in the beginning, when we started the process, it all looked like, yes, this has all the right ingredients in it. But when you put all the ingredients in it, the pie that you made still is not tasty enough, and you just decide, well, this is just not worth submitting. Right, and we pulled it out. I mean, we've done that many times, and sometimes we've had to pull back on our nominations because there've been last-minute changes in terms of what our internal stakeholders may have decided, whether whether we should do it or not, or whether we are ready for the public scrutiny or the public attention that we might get as a consequence of receiving an award. So there's both of these aspects come into play, and we've pulled nominations back.
We did as well. So for instance, we had one where we had a really strong licensee. They had some product sales, but we had other interested licensees. So we thought, oh, this one's great, but it could tell a better story next year. So we put that one off. And then we also definitely look at the collaborations, but we also had some really interesting material sharing. So that ended up turning into some diagnostics in our case, or vaccine candidates. That was shared so widely, and there was some interesting technology transfer agreements that were worked out, streamlined, et cetera. So that one ended up telling a better story that particular year. So we went in a different route, and that was even more collaboration focused. So that was more of a partnership. So that one worked out for us.
Mike, I see you nodding as well. I guess you might have had that experience.
So no, what I wanted to share is that several years ago, we looked around and said, we're not doing as good a job as we should for FLC award submissions. And so we actually went out and found a consultant to help us. And you're going to hear from Nancy Picard from Fowintech in the next session. And she helped bring structure to our decision-making process and in particular, carefully vetting the technologies on the front end with the questionnaire and kind of a set of decision checkpoints, so that we haven't recently had the situation where we got to the end of the process and decided that we didn't have something that we could work with. But the reason that hasn't happened is because we've had a third party who has been able to dedicate focused attention on the process, and that has helped us to have a more streamlined program from beginning to end.
So do you think that objectivity of that third party has been helpful?
I think it's very helpful because you bring your cutest baby, and they kindly tell you that maybe that's not as cute as you thought it was. So yes, having that third party to bounce it off of is very helpful as well.
Now, each of you have talked about licensee issues too. Have you ever had an opportunity where your licensee has put pressure on you to make a submission to FLC, or added pressure, or a collaborator who thought, hey, this is going to be very beneficial to me? Have you had that occur as well?
So I will say from the Oak Ridge side, I don't recall having pressure placed on us to submit, but I can tell you that when they win, particularly if it's an early stage company, the visibility that comes from a success at the FLC is greater than anything a small business can generate on its own. So there is real value, particularly to a small business, to winning an FLC award because of the media attention that comes from that. And so it's a great validation, and I see it as one of the services that we can provide our licensees. There's not a lot that we can do post-license, but one thing we can do is take advantage of the ability of Federal Labs to access the media that small businesses don't have. So anything that we can do to promote those businesses and the successes that they're having is I think, mission aligned from the tech transfer perspective.
I completely agree with Mike. Again, I mean, we've never had any licensee put pressure on us, but our licensees have benefited tremendously from the public attention that they've received after the FLC. You know, they splash it on their web pages with the FLC logo, and they have the ability to actually put out their own press releases that they are working with a national laboratory, which brings with it, you know, a certain marquee appeal to it, and they can claim that, you know, they're working with the national laboratories on cutting edge research, cutting edge technologies, you know, that are groundbreaking and impactful. So they have the ability to do all those things by receiving an FLC in collaboration with the laboratories.
And for us, we've decided which technology, for instance, or partnership we'd like to honor each time. So the different partners that we have, whether they're licensed, they don't necessarily know about, oh, it's time to submit an FLC award this year. So we put it forward to them and make sure, and they're usually thrilled. And we do have to watch because some of them may kind of tell the story their way, which is great, but we also want the appropriate federal responses weaved in. And yeah, and just we'd rather not have them go crazy with, okay, have a press release go out without the inventor's input, for instance. So we try to really make sure once we do notify them that, hey, you know, we're a team on this and we're putting it forward together. So.
Yeah, that's you raised a good point. That's actually a good segue to my next question, because a couple of things that both of you guys that you've mentioned is engaging the stakeholders, the inventors. At what point in time do you really engage them in the process in your timeline? And we really haven't even touched on timeline, and just looking at the previous presentation and seeing that the call is going to come out right in the middle of July and it's going to end in September. You got vacations, and then you've got to engage people. That made me think of a couple questions to ask you guys. Is one, how do you get that inventor stakeholder engagement sort of in the process? How do you get them engaged, keep them engaged? You know, they're in the middle of lab work, they're in the middle of everything that they're doing, plus you're in the summer. So how does that work for you, Kanai?
So PNNL has done a great job internally of advertising our rewards and recognition program to all our staff, and our staff realize that these FLC awards, R&D 100 awards, all these various ways by which their technology or tech transfer can be recognized and rewarded is important to them, right? And they recognize it. So right from the beginning, right when we have our first licensing discussions and the ability to do a technology transfer, or the opportunity to do a tech transfer arises, we basically engage with them right away, saying that, hey, if this is a successful partnership, if this is a successful tech transfer, if we are able to put all these piece parts together so that our licensee can get a product out into the market and demonstrate impact to our sponsors, I think we'll be in a great position to nominate this technology for an FLC award. So they know it right from the beginning that there is the potential to do so. Now, having said that, when we really get them engaged in the process of the FLC nomination itself, goes back to what Mike had said earlier, which is that once the Technology Commercialization Council, for the lack of a better word, agrees that this is a technology that's ready for an FLC nomination, it's at that point that we get them engaged in actually the writing or the storytelling of that technology transfer story.
Mhm. If it's helpful, so as soon as I know this is the one, this is our baby for this year, if you will, I'll go ahead and do a personal outreach to the inventor team and also copy their supervisor and say, hey, we'd love to nominate you this year. Do you have interest? Do you have bandwidth to support this? Oftentimes our inventors are super busy, as you might imagine, I'm sure at most federal labs, if not all, depending on even the time of the year. I'll offer to write up a good bit of the entry and then ask for their expertise on certain questions. We might interview a group too, depending on what the project is, just to get some more information real quick. And I try to make it as minimal as possible where it requires as little effort on their side as can be. And then they oftentimes will get super excited and they'll have really wonderful information to add. They'll have numbers that we wouldn't, they'll have reach, they'll have activities that they've done, innovations that they've supported this whole effort with. So they'll include what they would like to, and then even their leadership will have some different takes sometimes, and they'll even have some really really valuable points from a bigger picture that we wouldn't necessarily have included. So it's a true team effort to get it done.
So I would say that the story is essentially the same here. First of all, it's a big deal. So our researchers are incentivized from the prestige perspective to want to have this award. So that helps with the engagement. Secondly, in the selection process, we do consider whether or not the inventor is available and interested. And third, as Lisa said, we don't ask them to put pen to paper and write this thing. We ask them to participate in interviews. And in fact, the FWINTech team does a great job of kind of managing that process so that we get the information from them. But, it's a much lighter lift to get on the telephone and have an interview than it is to be given a form and be asked to fill this thing out. So that helps encourage engagement with the researchers.
So
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add one other thing that, at PNNL, our communication staff have actually, there's a set of communication staff that have been doing this for many years, and they've kind of honed their skills in how to write these nomination packages. And so, we tap into that pool of communication managers, and they are very, very good at interviewing our staff, extracting the story, actually asking the questions and the so whats and the so whats, trying to drill down to what the nugget of tech transfer was that really excelled, and how to then take those nuggets and then craft a story around it.
Yep.
do each of you, and I heard Lisa say, and I think Kanan as well, do you sort of mine throughout the year your portfolios of activities so that you're not waiting to know, say, June or July when to start looking at what you're going to submit? Are you really just kind of watching your portfolio of activities throughout the year? And do you actually look to prior years, or are you looking at some activities that may have happened 2 years previously that are ongoing as potential submissions? Is that part of your process? Would you submit something that maybe has occurred over a 24-month period and as an award submission and maybe still ongoing?
Yeah.
That was one of the questions we had, is whether or not you might consider something that was within the 12-month time period or 24 months
So
or even,
we've gone back to many years before also. So yeah, I mean, as I said, we maintain a roster and we just decide which ones are ready for submission or not. And sometimes it could be a technology that may be 12 months or 24 months past, but it may have just come due or it may have ripened only now to actually bring to the market. So and again, I'll add one other thing, which is that we are not afraid of resubmissions. So if one wasn't selected this year, we're not afraid of recrafting that story because we believe in the technology, we believe in the impact, we believe in the story, and we are not worried about recrafting it and resubmitting it the following year.
Excellent point. Yes, and the technology transfer process, it matures. I mean, perhaps the initial concept could have been developed 7 years ago, but it took a long while to get the patent. And then even if we had a patent, it might have taken a while to get great licensees who actually were able to, further develop and manufacture the product and get it out there. So the innovation along the way and then the partnerships kind of mature over time. So we do keep our running list. And as I mentioned, we want to make sure there was a really great technology and effort that we don't want to miss the window where it has to be, the important part of the technology transfer and the innovation occur within the last 5 years, for instance, for the technology transfer entry. So we want to make sure that we don't let one where it was a lab, we might not have been honored or a really good one. We want to make sure that, that we get that entry into the mix. So we don't want anyone to be left out, if you will. So we try to really, the inventors get just really super excited and they're so appreciative. We want to make sure that we can shine the light on the technology or the collaboration partnership effort. And then that has also in turn fostered them to report more inventions perhaps, or get in touch with us with questions, or, I really like this. What do you think about this? So they're interested in us for helping them with new partnerships and new efforts. So it's kind of fostered more of a homegrown approach, if you will, and further technology transfer even within CDC.
That's cool.
so each of you guys have sort of mentioned putting a lot of resources into it. For labs that don't have the communication staff or the consulting staff, what would you suggest they do in terms of being able to put together a submission package if they don't have those types of additional resources? I mean, if they have tech transfer people or have a limited group of tech transfer people and do have stakeholder engagement, will they still be, able to put something together, in your opinion?
I think so. I do think, and I've heard a couple of the panelists say that they don't feel obligated to fill out every possible slot that they're allowed to. So if you focus and choose the ones that you think are the best, then I think that it's doable. And I actually looked at the slides for the section that's coming up, and there's some great tips in there on how to write a winning proposal. And I think with a commercialization manager or licensing executive that is familiar with the technology, that is mindful of some of the tips that you'll get in just a few minutes, I think it's very doable.
If I may add to helping with Whitney Hastings and the awards subcommittee, so I'll be rolling into the chair role coming up here. So we have fine-tuned the criteria for awards, and we've really spelled out in the directions what we're looking for. So we'll have that coming out and available with this next round of submissions. So there's even, if you will, better instructions. So there are some great helpful hints coming up in the next session, and definitely more details as to how to organize the submission in that. We found, particularly in years where we're shy of resources, we've had fellows or some other folks who have interest in writing. We've involved them. And we've also, if it's a particular lab and they might have good communication support, we've asked them, hey, would you like to help us tell the story a little more? So generally, we find out that like we know the ins and outs of technology transfer, so we can really showcase what might be a winning award entry, but we'll definitely get help from different groups to provide feedback and weave that all into the big story. So
yeah, regarding the lack of resources, as you pointed out, Claudia, I don't think it's fair to underestimate the motivation of our licensees itself and how much resources they can put to it. they might be in a great position to actually, if you tell them the criteria and the things that you need, they can be in a great position to give you videos and, you know, schematics or published material or, you know, drawings, etc., you know, or graphics, etc., that they're using for marketing to bolster your story. So, I mean, there's a lot that your licensee or your collaborator can bring to an FLC nomination package, and never underestimate that.
There's
That's a very
some
good point.
terrific statistics.
Very good point. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I want to give each one of you guys, starting with Lisa, a minute or two to kind of summarize and give your key points and takeaways that you want everybody to gain from, you know, how your process works, and to really, you know, hit what you think is important and significant. So Lisa?
Well, absolutely. Thank you. So we look at a number of things. For us, it's been very helpful to keep a good running list. So then that way, before you know it, the next call for submissions is out and it's like, oh, it's time again. So it's really, sorry, I have a cat who visited, of course. So it's just been really great. And we have to make it a team sport, if you will. So it may be where we have a running list. Our group, certainly technology transfer led, will make the ultimate decision as to which one we'd like to put forward that year, or 2 entries. We do check in with the partners, make sure that they're okay with this. We make sure that the partners also sign off on the content. The final content, and even if it's a write-up, if we've won the award, we make sure that the partners are okay. This represents my technology, and all are generally really thrilled. So we really appreciate the opportunity to kind of showcase what's going on within our laboratories, and then also found that it's just been an ever-growing tool, if you will, to get our inventor teams more involved with our office. So if you have a chance, even if you're lacking some bandwidth, tap into fellows, ask for volunteers around the office, try to get some different people who want to even help write segments of the entry, and then just do a quick polish towards the end. So it all ends up coming together. It's just a matter of deciding on the best entry for the year, the most timely, and then or 2, and then getting your foot out there. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Kanan?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what Lisa just said, yeah, writing these nomination packages or putting a good one together is a team sport. And, you know, right from the selection of the technology itself to crafting the narrative, to actually putting pen to paper, getting the graphics done, etc. It's a lot of effort, and I would recommend that you know that you get started early. So that's one thing. It is critical to the laboratories, at least to PNNL. It is critical that we participate in these FLC programs, because it shows our laboratories' leadership in science and technology, and the transfer of those technologies out into commercial spaces to deliver an impact to the nation. So it is critical to the laboratories to do this, and so we are extremely motivated to get that information out there, to get that knowledge out there, to get people knowing or get people to realize what their taxpayer dollars are doing. So it is very important for us to participate in these FLC programs and also submit quality nominations.
Mike?
So when we started, I said, as Kanan just said, these are a big deal to our labs, a big deal to our leadership, big deal to our messaging. I would say alongside the R&D 100, these are the biggest external awards that are awarded to our researchers and our teams. So we're motivated, and we find that our researchers are motivated because their managers are motivated and their sponsors are motivated. So that helps with the engagement. When you sit down to choose the tech transfer success stories that you want to highlight, my perspective is that it has to be some demonstration of excellence in tech transfer. So a successful deployment of a technology that didn't include something creative, something above and beyond from the tech transfer side, I think is less likely to be successful. So we look for that intentionality, that thoughtfulness, that creativity that is excellence in tech transfer. And then we look for stories that are on a path to be high impact or have already been high impact. And that combination of having done tech transfer right and having good outcomes, to me, is the sweet spot that makes a successful nomination.
We are at 1:15. I want to thank each one of you as presenters and speakers, and Lisa, Kanan, Mike, your information has been vital. And I hope that the people who have participated in this have gained some invaluable information on how to select things from their lab. I know I have. And if anyone has questions, feel free to post them in the chat. If you, we can try to answer them in the next session, or get the answer out somehow through FLC. Beth, did you want to jump in and add anything at this point?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you to all of our panelists so far. I think that this was really informative, and thank you very much